Welcome to the Husk Guys Podcast. Oh, yeah!
There we go. And we are live. What is up, Husker Nation? It is July 25th. It's a Thursday night at 8:15, and we got folks joining us already. We got a great show tonight. We are super pumped about it. We got Brett I want to make sure I say it right, Brett. I didn't even ask you. Brett Ciancia.
Yeah, you nailed it. You
Brett Ciancia. Pick Six Previews, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. It is the most accurate college football preview book on the market. It's fantastic. Brett is outstanding. He's been on a ton of different Husker podcasts across the Husker Nation. We're pumped to have him on here. And we will introduce him more properly in just a second as soon as we kick this show off with a quick note from our sponsors, which is us. We sponsor our own show. That's what we get to do when you have a big following. First off, for Pipeline Jerky. So Pipeline Jerky, for those who are joining, those who are listening, an NIL business created to carry forward the legacy of the offensive line at Nebraska. Every bag of jerky that you purchase, we got some pork jerky, we got some beef jerky. We'll be sending some your way, Brett, as soon as the show ends. Every bag pays a royalty directly back to the Huskers offensive line. We're on a mission to rebuild this offensive line. And it's looking pretty good. We got 5 stars coming this weekend. We got boys in the house. So things are looking good on the Huskers front. But also, we've been having a ton of fun with this. We just joined forces with Omaha Steaks. We got a really cool partnership going on with them. So for those who are paying attention, we're sending out invites. We just did a steak dinner with the entire offensive line. With Pipeline Jerky and Omaha Steaks partnership out at Chances Are out in York, Nebraska. We did a Father's Day gift box filled with Pipeline Steaks, as we're calling them, in partnership with Omaha Steaks. They're a great partner of ours as well. So shout out to Omaha Steaks, shout out to Chances Are. And also, we got new cool merch. Check this one out. Off-season national champs is going on right now. That's what we got going on right here. We got this one. We got Kool-Aid. We got This Is the Year. We got stuff that Andrew's rocking. We got a lot of good stuff going on. So check out the HuskGuysStore.com. And with that, Andrew, I'll kick to you to do a more proper introduction.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem at all. Easy intro to make. Brett is a college football guru, kind of a numbers nerd like myself, a geek of the game, kind of a gym rat, but for your brain. He is a Boston College grad, and he uses his elite education at this finest institution in all of the land to preach about everything college football. He dives into the numbers you've never really seen before, his own original stats, everything, produces them every year, and claims the throne of the last 10 years running as the most accurate college football preview magazine, which is incredible kind of for an individual solo startup that really has grown as a movement. So Brett, welcome to the show, and we'll kick it from there.
Yeah, well, thanks for the intro. Thanks for having me on, and a big congrats to the growth of Husk Guys and your alliance with Pipeline Jerky. And a quick note here, I'm joined by, it's 3 Eagles on the call right now, which is rare, 3 Boston College alum. And a quick story, this is just to prove their fandom, their Husker fandom back in the day, even in a college football wasteland, the Northeast of the U.S. When I was a freshman, you had to go on this certain bus stop on campus. And I remember right in clear view, I remember seeing this massive Husker flag in one of the dorm buildings every day. Like it was like a 10-foot flag. Come to find out, it was these Husk Guys right here. They were flying their colors up there in Chestnut Hill. But yeah, I never forgot that. Never formally was introduced until later in the game. But, just know they were repping very hard up there in the Northeast.
That's right. Yeah, Never stopped. Had a lot of questions about what the N was out there at that time, but people came to know. People came to know real quick.
Yeah, but let's talk. I mean, Brett, we want to kick it off at the top. So I've been following you. I've been following Pick Six Previews. I get the magazine every year, and this is the first opportunity we've had to talk, face to face. We've DM'd a whole bunch, but I mean, start at the top. Start right then. I mean, when did Pick Six Previews start? Was it at BC? Was it in college? When did you kind of have the idea for it? When did it start? How did it start? And tell us a little bit about the story of how it came to be.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, grew up outside of Philadelphia in Eastern Pennsylvania. It's really a pro sports area. It's all Eagles talk, the Philadelphia Eagles, that is. But, my dad and I, we were just huge college football fans. Our big deal was Saturdays. We would line up the TVs. We would, watch them from noon till midnight, and just loved the passion and the legacy of college football. So unfortunately, there wasn't anything great around us. I mean, Penn State's 3 hours away, and so it was all just TV. So I started to appreciate the game nationally, picking up all these rivalries from across the country, the different conferences. Long story short, I always read the preview magazines, and I always appreciated them. But I remember thinking that, wow, that they could dig a little deeper. And then I would turn on the TV, and they'd be talking only about Alabama and Ohio State all the time. And I'm thinking, man, all these teams should get the proper coverage they need. So eventually, sophomore year at Boston College, I launched Pick Six Previews, actually with Mike Nawazi at a Unionville high school buddy. Me and him launched this, and it took off. Our first year, we were graded the most accurate. So we had the 2012 title in Power 5, or I guess back then it was Power 6, and then kept growing and growing. Originally, it was just online, and we were just writing up the teams ourselves. And then eventually, I took it on just myself and made it a one-man company, and then and then just kept expanding and expanding, put the paid product together, the full book in 2019. That was the first actually standalone product. First 2 years of that were PDF only. Finally went to the hard copy in 2022. And really, it has grown a lot since then because, it's an old-fashioned product. You want to have the hard copy magazine. You want to walk with it to the beach, to the lake, to the couch, coffee table. So, there's something you said about the hard copy product. So it's taken off from there. Like you mentioned at the top, the 10-year title at accuracy is really a point of pride because I'm going up against these other legacy brands that have literally 100 writers and editors and staff. And I'm out there covering all 70 teams myself. And so it's definitely a point of pride to win this title every year. So that's the quick story of it. Had the honor of becoming a Heisman voter, was named to the All-American Selection Committee, which is also a great honor. And, just been able to talk to a lot of head coaches and coordinators and really make the radio and podcast tour. So I just loved every second of it.
I'm continually impressed by the depth of coverage, like you said, like the stats that you have, the uniqueness that you have. That I'm glad you are a Heisman voter because I feel like, anytime you see Heisman voters or like anybody who gets to vote on anything, voting for the playoff, I'm like, do these guys even watch the games?
Right.
You kind of see half the time. Like, I don't even know if they watched any of these games. They're just like, oh, they passed the eye test. But that, I guess, tell me about the origin of that for you. Like, what kind of numbers were you seeing, and have you seen that you were like, I need to go way beyond just the eye test to really start to make these predictions?
Yeah, well, I think some of the magazines and a lot of the coverage you see on TV, it's very surface level. It's just buzzwords. It's just kind of hollow. So I wanted to really dig in. And as you can tell from the preview magazine, I'm definitely a numbers guy. I mean, at Boston College, I was in the Carroll School of Management. I was, finance, accounting.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a journalist background at all. In fact, I had to really beg to get into the only sports writing class that BC offered. It was like pulling teeth to just get into one class. So yeah, I'm not a journalist background. I come at this from a numbers perspective and really an X's and O's perspective too. So yeah, I devised my own formulas, my game grader formula, really just variables that I thought carried more weight than what you'd hear on TV or from other sources. So, per play, adjusting for opponent strength, it just takes into account different styles and strength of schedules. So, but yeah, you can see them all laid out there in the magazine. It's very in-depth numerically, but then in the writing, I try and put it back into very readable terms because, it's boring to just read, oh, this team was 0.125X. It doesn't mean anything. So putting it into readable terms, explaining the X's and O's of it, what the schemes are trying to run, their recruiting strategies, their branding. So yeah, I try and balance the two, the numbers and the storyline, and really paint a picture for each team.
And then for those who are listening now, the best way to purchase this is pick6previews.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the only place it's available. We're not in stores yet, but we have the hard copy and the digital copy, both available, pick6previews.com.
All right. Well, yeah. So those listening, pick6previews.com. I promise you, it's the most in-depth college football magazine I've ever read. It's incredible depth. So make sure you check that out. Well, I mean, did you know right away this was going to be a hit and that this could turn into something that you could dedicate your career to, or is like CSOM calling and you should have gone to Wall Street, but you just said did this?
Well, it's easy to look back and think that it was overnight, but it was a lot of years of grinding. The Twitter was really the equalizer here. Like I said, I'm not a journalist. I didn't come up through the beat writer ranks or work at a local newspaper or cover Penn State or Temple around here, it was really from Twitter. And I started to connect with other big fan bases, big accounts, big podcasters, radio, the coaches, the players, everybody. So it took off from Twitter. Twitter is nice because, I mean, it rewards good content. It rewards good, thought out, well-reasoned content. I mean, of course, it also rewards hot takes, but I think the lasting impact of good quality information and takes, stands the test of time. So I credit a lot of it to the Twitter base, really spreading this, enjoying the content there. And then it turned into more of a product about 5 years ago. But originally the first 5 years, it was just a great Twitter account that I loved updating and writing in the preseason. But so long story short, it has really taken off the last couple of years, but it was not an overnight success. It was a lot of grinding. So, I mean, it took a while to get to this point.
Good for you. Congrats on your success. It's super exciting. Where do you hope to take it?
Well, I mean, I'd love to continue with the preview magazine itself. I want to just keep growing that. It's, I'd like to maybe find a strategic partner on the national level. I was, in talks with some of the big recruiting sites, and we'll see what happens with that, or maybe find a big strategic partner elsewhere. I was thinking also to maybe involve an in-season product, really the same quantity and quality of information that you get in my magazine, but just refresh data each week as the season goes. Game reviews, film reviews, game previews. So it's in development. I need to see if that's feasible and if there's a market for it. I think there is. So yeah, we'll see it continue to grow like that. And as long as it keeps growing every year, I'll keep rolling with it. And it's been good.
Good for you. Should we talk accuracy, Andrew?
Yeah, so just coming through kind of the initial pages, it feels to me like the accuracy of predictions and the accuracy of all the numbers and everything is kind of your calling card and what you're hanging your hat on. I did buy the Phil Steele book this year.
Ooh.
And hear me out. There is definitely some either behind the scenes beef with you guys, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he definitely makes claims that he's the most accurate. And then you have claims that seem backed up by evidence that you're the most accurate. And then you have some quotes in your magazine, if I may quote one, because Phil Steele had quoted in his book, he's the most accurate preview magazine over 12 years. And then what I think is a response directly to him is, unlike in other magazines, I present here the actual stats in 10-year graphic, not shifted goalposts like 4-year, 12-year, or putting in scores for Pick Six previews from 1995 when I was 2 years old, which is hilarious because he does have you in his book making predictions in 1995. So I want to give you a chance to have the mic and respond here. This is like a Kendrick Lamar rap battle type situation here between you and Phil Steele. So you've got the mic.
No, so I mean, like I said at the top, I have a lot of respect for all the national magazines out there, especially Phil. I mean, he's on the All-American committee with me, and he really runs the show. He's very knowledgeable, very well connected with the head coaches. But coming up from this myself, the accuracy thing was really important to me. I wanted to prove that I was the most accurate at predicting seasons and games and teams because I don't have the legacy brand name behind me. So that was always a goal of mine to win this company stats, and they put out their accuracy rankings. They do them in exact intervals of 3, 5, and 10 years. So my goal was always, hey, my 10th year, I want to be the number one in the 10-year span. Come to see, I got the number one title in 10 years in. But then when we looked at the other magazine, he had shifted it to call it 11 years, and now it's 12 years. So it is what it is. It's a marketing game also, and I respect it. I think the all-time grid that is in his magazine, they just add average or below average scores for people before they existed. So my number in that grid is being dragged down by, like you said, when I was 2 years old, 3 years old. It's just like an average.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think it's like an average score or something, but it's weighing me down. It makes it look like I'm the 10th accurate or something. So I don't know. It is what it is. It's a marketing game also, but it's a point of pride for me to win the accuracy title as a one-man show without a big army of staffers or writers. So to see that the goalpost shift a little bit is frustrating, but it's all
I can
marketing.
see how that would irk you a little bit. I mean, he literally has you as like, what was your accuracy in 1995, and it wasn't that good. I mean, sorry, Brett.
That was
I
a
can
bad
tell
year
you.
for me. It was a bad year.
But when you were 2, you were just, I mean, you were in the dumps, man, that year. So, anyway, speaking of stats, I thought we would maybe take some time to dive into Nebraska because that's what we're all here
Let's
for.
do it. Husker time.
All right. All right. So the first thing that jumps out as you kind of are reading through your book here, the most telling stat, I think, like for me, as a kind of a Midwest, Big Ten program trying to climb out of the dumps is probably like a development program, or at least historically we were a development program, is the win conversion stats and then the player development stats that you have. And we did pull a slide here, and we are 70th out of 70.
Which is not good.
0.0.
For those keeping score at home, that is not good.
Plutarski. 70th out of 70 in both. So my question for you is not great. How do we get better? And are you convinced that we are going to get better under Rule?
But first, can you explain win conversion for those?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Get into what
sure.
the stats are, and are we going to be number one soon?
Yeah, sure. So these two metrics here I put in there because, recruiting is important. It's the starting point, but I think a lot has to happen for those 4 or 5 years that the players on campus. You need to have development. You got to, play them to their potential. You have to have schemes that work and fit the personnel. So, other sites or whatever would just only hone in on the recruiting rankings and then rank teams from there. It more goes into it. So what these two do, they compare your average recruiting ranking over a certain set of years compared to the actual wins on the field. That shows us how the staff is doing, how the schemes are working, player identification, all that. Player development also takes the recruiting ranking, but then compares to NFL draft turnout. So 4 or 5 years later, are you actually sending them to the pros? Are they playing to their 4-star and 5-star caliber? As you can see on the graph here, not good, not great for Nebraska. Dead last in both.
Wow.
Part of that, I
we're
think
behind Colorado, for God's sake.
Colorado 69, and we're worse.
Oh. Yeah, I think part of it is 2 staff changes over this time frame, and there is a timing lag here. So it might take a couple years of my magazine to actually see the results for Nebraska. Now, with that said, when Trev Alberts hired Rule, his top priority was to find a top player developer, and I think that's proven out by Rule at previous stops. He helped turn Temple around, he turned Baylor around with way less resources, way less talented, raw talent that Nebraska has on hand and potentially. So will they improve? Well, they have to improve from 70th. That's a given. But I think there's no reason they can't be one of the top developers in the Big Ten. I mean, for Nebraska to get to their program potential, I think they need to really hammer home player development, just given their geography, their location.
So Indiana, we're buying everybody.
Yeah, it's got to improve. It will improve under Matt Rule. So yeah, that's that. It might take a few years to show up in this stat, but just know that looking backwards, those 2 staffs were horrible in both aspects.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible. Like when you look at, Illinois appearing at number 2 on that list, it just kind of shows you they've been doing better with less.
So I mean, when you look at Nebraska's recruiting profile, they're always in that top 25 area, top 30. Even recently climbing up to the top 20, but then almost dead last in NFL draft and wins. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have the longest, you guys, I don't have to tell you this, but the longest bowl drought in Power 5. So
thanks, bro.
It's just hard to believe. So when you take those 2 variables, that's going to be a dead last output in both of these.
So these teams at the top on the win conversion and player development, you see, at Kansas State, you see Wake Forest, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, and Iowa up there at the top. Iowa, it makes total sense. They do a ton with very bad recruiting every year. It's amazing what they're able to squeeze out. But the other teams too, that's essentially saying like they don't have the 4 and 5 stars, and Kansas State's able to win. They're able to win a lot more games with 3-star, 4-star, low 4-star type players. Is that am I reading that right?
Yeah, that's spot on. I think a good example to paint the picture is Alabama, where they're number 1 in recruiting and they're number 1 in wins. So in this metric, they're somewhere in the middle. That's why on the graphic here, I show you the top 12 and the bottom 12, because at the really polar opposite ends of the spectrum, that's where you see the outliers. So yeah, that's true with Kansas State. They're not a good recruiting program. They do a lot of walk-on, a lot of JUCO out there in Kansas. And then their schemes work. They develop their guys, and you see them in both categories there. Iowa, you're familiar with that. And same with Matt Campbell, what he's done at Iowa State, a lot of 2-star, 3-star guys. The player development column on the right, you'll be able to see some of the NFL and higher recruiters like a Michigan or a Penn State. That shows that not only are they top 15 or top 20 recruiters, but they're also like top 5 in NFL draft picks. So really strong at that to get onto that list as a top recruiter.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa's on both, which kills me to say, but they produce a ton of draft picks and they do a ton without a lot of talent. I mean, it kills me to see them on there. But both of those lists are representative of who wins. And I'm also seeing Texas A&M's the one that jumps out on that win conversion too. They have unlimited talent and they do nothing with it, which makes total sense. They'd fall on the low end of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the beauty of this is when you look at these lists, it kind of intuitively it makes sense. You look at these and it's like, all right, yeah, that checks out, and it kind of matches what you watch on Saturdays. A&M, you brought them up. They had the number 1 recruiting class not only of 2022 but of all time, and then they followed that up losing to App State and going losing record. So just total failure there by the last staff, but. Yeah, a lot of these, it reflects what you see on Saturdays, I think, it turns out.
Do you watch every game, Brett?
I try to, my goal is never watch a commercial. So on Saturdays, I have my 4 TVs lined up and, that's the beauty of football, though, is with 4 live games, you figure 1 or 2 are on commercial anyway. And then of the 2 that are live, one of them's probably in a huddle or doing some stupid review for 5 minutes. So it really is all live action, and it's not not overwhelming when you have the eye for it. But
so you got 4 screens set up. What's your like? Is it nobody talk to me? Like my phone's away. Like I'm in the zone for like 14 hours.
It's a lot of caffeine. I get all wired up. A lot of caffeine and but me and my old man, my dad, he's really the only guy that I would like to spend a football Saturday with. We've been doing it, like I said, since we were little, or since I was little, and he loves it too. He eats and breathes college football, so we're always talking. And then now my wife also, we're 1 year married, and she's gotten to experience a college football season. So she's really enjoying college football as well. So that's pretty much it, though. Yeah, it's not like a big watch party with 20 people and barbecue going. It's definitely laser focused, but I enjoy it.
Does she? I mean, are you being serious? She actually enjoys that you watch.
Really, yeah.
She likes that you watch 17 straight out.
I was honestly going to ask how it's possible you have a wife. I mean,
what's great about it, guys, is there's only 12 fall Saturdays. Now, if I was an MLB analyst and there was 162 of them, I would never have been married. That would have worked. So, I try and there's 12 Saturdays and a long off season, so it's all worth it.
That's amazing.
100%. Well, I think if we want to dive into ways that we can improve upon this, I think that would be a good place to jump into some more Husker depth.
Yeah. Here. Well, at first, so I started this because I read this and it was like, I just texted Andrew as I read it. I was like, this is diabolical. You just dragged us for like an entire paragraph.
Yeah. For those listening, it's like a gory movie scene we're showing right now, but it's actually just the first paragraph of Brett's intro into Nebraska.
What happens for us in the offseason, Brett, is by this point in the offseason, so it's July 25th, I have completely blacked out that we even had a season last year. I don't even remember it. I don't remember any part of it. And so all we're thinking about is Raiola, and we're just thinking about Rule, and like he just had his the Big Ten media days yesterday, and it was just absolutely like electric the entire time. Unbelievable content.
You're so then Kool-Aid man right now.
The Kool-Aid is just it's through the roof. Like I don't see any losses on the schedule. Maybe Ohio State, and then I pull this thing up, and it's like, God, we were so bad. What is going on?
You really put it in perspective pretty well how bad we were.
Longest bowl drought. We were dead last in turnovers, which I remember from December, but I like forgot intentionally because I didn't want to remember it. 31 turnovers. I cannot believe we turned the ball over 31 times. Unbelievable. And then the close losses, which goes back forever. But the close losses, the wasted opportunities. I was telling Andrew, like I genuinely appreciate how like objective and like straightforward you are. It's just very, very hard to read.
It's got to be painful to read. It's painful to talk about too. I'm on 1620 The Zone, Gary Sharp show every Friday in the fall. And, I put in there the last 5 years about the 1-score losses, because every Friday when I'm on there with Gary, it's like, all right, well, you lost by 1 score. They were close. It can't happen again. Right. And then,
Yeah, it can't.
and then fast forward to next Friday, it's like, okay, what happened a second time? It won't happen a third time. And it's
No.
been like that, not just
No,
one
it will.
season, but 5 years of it. And like, it makes for bad radio, guys. It's just a lot of these close losses. I'm repetitive, but it's just, I've never seen anything like it across the Power 5 landscape. And I've been doing this now 13 seasons. It's just unprecedented. So it's got to turn around. We say it every year, but it's got to turn around.
Is there, so you cover across all of college football. We are such a statistical anomaly. Is there anybody even close to this level of like close heartbreak every single day, week in and week out as us?
I haven't seen it.
Great. Awesome.
I'll throw you a couple. Iowa State, they're a team that they've had so many special teams blunders over the years.
I do not want to be them.
It really fools my game grader formula because I don't do special teams in the formula. So when you look at Iowa State on paper, you're thinking they should have been 9 or 10 wins every single year. And they suffer from the Frost advisory, as I call it, the 1-score losses.
It's got a name. It's got a name to it.
Yeah, I tweeted that out with the rankings of it. There's a huge gap after Nebraska with the most 1-score losses. But if the fans don't hate me already, the inverse of this, who survives on close wins and grinds out wins when they shouldn't have, you can probably guess who that's going to be.
That's Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa is unbelievable at this. It's actually, the national media loves to just run jokes at Iowa because of their offense. I actually respect the formula, man. It's incredible defense. The special teams are elite, and they just find wins out of nothing. So, anyway, that's where you're at. It's got to get better. It will. I think now with competent quarterback play, that's really what's been missing.
Yeah.
All right, you can start this off. You start, Andrew. It's too much.
Okay. So we are on to our next little tidbit here. We're jumping into the offense now. The offense, we're putting up Brett's stats, and there's a lot of red. Red is bad, unless you're talking Go Big Red. But this is a situation where red across the board, scoring offense 123rd, points per play 122nd, total offense 115th, yards per play 105th, 105. Rushing offense was the best in the entire thing because we couldn't do anything else, and that was 39th. Yards per carry 55th, O-line rush run push was 68th, explosive rush 49th. And on it goes. You have to get his book and just dive into it for sure. But the biggest thing, I guess, that stands out here to me is it's all about the passing offense. Like our rushing offense, we could have gotten going. We could have gotten it going more if we were able to pass. And even our rushing offense, like we still couldn't totally rely on it. So here's my 2-part question for you. We haven't averaged 30 or more points per game since 2018. That is, it's been quite a year. Like last year was not the only year we struggled on offense. The 30 points is not an unattainable thing. How improved do you see us like this year, and will we hit that mark?
Yeah, well, I think it all comes down to quarterback last year. The Jeff Sims experiment did not work out. Watch that Colorado game. It was just unbelievable. The fumbles, the fumbled snaps, and just really giving games away. The Minnesota game should never have been given away. But that was the Sims era. And then Heinberg, I thought did okay. He did a lot in the run game and really, I think, motivated the players around him, but still the turnovers were there. The picks were there. So, think of this. If you were to put Raiola in the formation last year, how many of those November games did they win? Probably himself, his presence there, not turning it over 31 times, probably flips 2 or 3 of those games. And now you're talking about an 8-4 or a 7-5 Nebraska team last year. So I think it really comes down to just quarterback play and solidifying that spot. I watched him in the spring game, and I know it's just a spring game, but he was also just a early enrollee freshman, and he had the whole arsenal on display. The long ball was there, some touch pass to the corner of the end zone, quick shots.
So beautiful.
So I think that he immediately will fix a lot of the problems there. Now, you mentioned points per game. The one I want to throw out the stat is the sacks per game, because the national average for pass protection is 2 sacks allowed per game. Nebraska hasn't even hit the average mark there since 2016. Going on a decade of not even average offensive line. So we got to keep selling the jerky. We got to sell that pipeline jerky, get that pipeline back. But with that said, I think that this team is ready for revival. The offensive line, very experienced, very veteran. 4 guys are almost super seniors at this point. He brought in a starter off of Florida's lineup. So, I think it's going to take some steps forward here by Raiola and a veteran offensive line.
And then that brings up kind of the running game as well, because I think if you take the passing game and you go from, 129th ranked passing offense, which is second to last to Iowa, I believe. You take that and you go up to, let's say, 65th, not mounds of improvement, but definite improvement. The running game, like, can we totally lean on that? My question for you there is that, so we only ran for over 200 yards twice last year. Our average per game was pretty good, but we really only exploded, in two different games, and it was against Colorado and Northern and UNI last year. We were 1-1 in those games as well. We lost our top two running backs. We lost some other skill possessions. So the question there is, A, who's going to lead the room? And then B, like, do you think that you see us as a team that's going to try and milk clock and try and play possession football, try and still play Big Ten football, even though we've got Raiola's cannon in the backfield now?
Well, I think that's definitely the formula. I think when you look at rules passed and what he wants to build a program around, it's definitely a physical run game. And so when you compare last year's stats to what to expect in 2024, there's pros and cons. I think from the quarterback spot, you're going to definitely get less carries, less involvement, less rushing. And that's not a bad thing. You want to protect Raiola. You don't want him taking hits and 20 carries a game. Yeah. Like Harburg was doing last year. So you lose some run production from the quarterback spot, but you get back a healthy stable of running backs finally. I mean, the top two guys were knocked out in the same game last year, just terrible injury luck. So you get both of them back, Emmett Johnson back. You get a 4-star transfer from Oregon. So yep. I think it's going to be a true committee. I know that's such a buzzword, but you got 4 caliber guys there. So I think it's going to be a net positive, less from the quarterback spot, more from a real traditional run game. You get your top 2 threats back and a veteran O-line. It's got to improve from there.
Love that.
I'd actually like to. So the one green one we have on here, I guess we have 2 green ones. The returning production. How do you view returning production, not just for Nebraska, but across all of the teams that you grade in this transfer portal era? And I guess the one team that's jumping out to me right now is Ohio State. The fact that they have no returning production because they just paid $20 million for a brand new offense. How do you view that? Where our returning production has a lot of red next to it, has a lot of not great numbers, but we like them and we think they're going to do well. How do you view that in the transfer portal era, and how has that changed for you over the last handful of years?
Yeah, well, it's certainly changed. Just like almost all of every facet of the sport has changed. I think that if you're going 5 or 6 years back, it was way more emphasis on just the high school recruiting rank and then the returning production. Those were the 2 big variables. Obviously high recruiting ranks usually correlate with better performance, and then the higher returning production number correlates to year-over-year statistical improvement. That's still true, but with the transfer portal, that both those variables have weakened. I mean, now, if you look on paper at A&M's high school recruiting trend, it looks like a top 5 recruiter, but a lot of those players have transferred out. So you need to go position by position. It's made my job and my preview 10 times harder to pull off. Way more time, but I think it's worth it to get the end product. Position by position, you really got to dig in. These are nice indicators at a quick glance. Like, you can see that most of the offense is back for Nebraska. Most of the defense is back, but you really got to dig in team by team, position by position. And again, not all transfers or returning starters are equal. I mean, sometimes it's not ideal to have the same offensive line back if they were weak performers the year before. You could pull in 5, quote, Ohio State transfers. Were they backups? Were they walk-ons there? Were they actually Ohio State starters? So it's just a never-ending spiral of just trying to find the truth in the data. So maybe that's one of my problems too, but maybe it's a blessing is a curse kind of thing. I'm addicted to getting all the info I can. So it's endless out there with the transfer portal and, but hopefully that's reflected on the pages.
One of the lightning rods that probably I'm now curious about, we'll probably get to it at the end, but just to bring them up now, the team that breaks every rule and doesn't do anything right is Colorado with Deion, who we play second. We play them on Inter, and I'm going to go to that game. Where do they come out in all of this? I guess I could scroll through and see where it's at, but he's 100% transfer portal. Essentially, doesn't do any high school recruiting. They had a mess of a season last year. Like, where do you stand on them? I don't know, kind of open-ended question.
Yeah, well, Colorado is a case study, the Dion experiment. I mean, this is a program that was pretty much dead. I mean, they were right there with Kansas over the last 10, 15 years of being basically a dead program. So they needed a shot in the arm. They needed something to switch it up, and he certainly did that. But yeah, so I've never seen anything like it in 13 years covering college football. So what I do a little bit of a pre-write in March and April, and then more towards the season, I refine it and go with the final product. First time ever, I had to throw the entire Colorado preview out last year. I mean, it was the entire roster had changed. I literally typed it up. I just deleted the Word document. It was not even relevant. Every position had changed. So I had to start from scratch
for that.
Yeah. It was something like 65 new players out of 85 scholarships. So
it's unbelievable.
So it was a great experiment. It was also, people will forget how bad they were the year before. I mean, this was a really historically bad team in 2022. 2022. So it would have been tough anyway with 2023. And I think a bigger indicator will be this year. Now, with that said, it was not a 1-year transfer experiment because already 45 of those guys are gone. So There were 45 guys that transferred in and out within 12 months. So it's just, it's insane. So
hashtag we leaving.
Yeah. So it's incredible. But I think that they've upgraded at very specific places. Quarterback, I really like Sanders, a quarterback. Their receiver room is really strong. They go 3 deep, 3 threats there. Their defensive line really got upgraded from the portal this year, but there are still weak spots: the secondary, the pass defense, and the O-line. So a lot of hot and cold there. I think they're going to be better than last year, but still outside my top 40.
We need them to be bad. And they completely snuck up on us last year I just thought they were a clown show. I thought they had no chance. I thought it was like, there's just absolutely no way you can get 70 new players and beat Nebraska, and they beat the living doors off of us. And that can't happen this year.
No, it cannot.
Yeah. And so I thought it would be a 1-year transfer thing. It happened again. And like you said at the top there, that he doesn't like the high school recruit. He says, why would I go in home, do an in-home visit? They can come see my home here in Boulder. It's a very unique strategy.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. It's getting attention. It's getting some talented players in there that they would have never had a crack on. So it's no surprise that they lead in the most all transfer. I have an all transfer team this year. They have 7 guys on there on the Big 12 all transfer team. So no surprise there. It's a lot of new talent coming in, but can it really gel within months of arriving on campus? We'll see.
I really hope that.
Well, speaking of transfers, who do you see for our before we get into defense and stuff too? Who do you see as our newcomer of the year, transfer or freshman on the offensive side?
Well, I think the big transfer headliner on the offense will be Jamal Banks. He landed on my Big 10 all transfer team as one of the receivers.
Yeah.
I think that, you help solidify that position with an experienced Power 5 guy. Wake Forest, they threw the ball really well the last couple of years. And he joins a stable that I know you have some speed in the slots, and you have some former 5-star Coleman on the outside. Hopefully he stays healthy. Got a big tight end with Vidoni. But I would say that Banks is my guy on the offense. Who are we picking from on defense for transfers? I don't think anybody landed on my all transfer team there.
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Thompson from Syracuse is a big one, and then C.R. Wright probably from USC. He might have a chance to jump on in as well. So Thompson brings experience in that system. I had a chance to talk with Tony White a couple cycles back. He runs the 3-3-5, very unique defense. I'm sure you guys have covered this. You've seen it live last year. It paid great dividends. I think it was the best Nebraska defense I've seen since those Pelini teams, the Peso defenses back when they had Sue and Hamukamara. So it's been a long time, but they finally looked like the old black shirts last year.
We can jump into D now. I mean, look at all the green compared to the red on the offense.
This feels better already.
Well, I just think I would agree, and I appreciate you saying that about the Pelini teams. That's kind of the way I felt. It was like the offense could sort of never figure it out, but the defense, anytime they were out there, we were like, oh, we're going to be fine, which we did not feel at all. I mean, Frost completely ignored the defense for years. So it was encouraging to see for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, for sure. That was nice to see that back for Nebraska. It had been a while. I mean, the Riley defenses were awful. Diaco, that year was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a terrible experiment. And then, yeah, so this was nice to see. They were really flying around the ball, especially the run defense was really stout. Trenches were tough. And it just seemed like a raised level of energy that you hadn't seen there in a while. So, and the good news gets better. 8 starters are back, and these are proven players. These are all conference caliber players. A little thin at linebacker, but I think they're trading in some speed here with John Bullock and Javen Wright, both converted safeties. So this defense, the 3-5, you're already subbing out some size for speed, and it got even faster at linebacker. So, but you're right about Thompson coming in. He has experience in this defense, a Syracuse backer. So he'll at the very least, give some knowledge to the room, but definitely going to be in the rotation there. So I have high hopes for the defense. I think they were absolutely snubbed by the video game. Now, I can't believe I'm comparing to the video game, but I did see this make the rounds on Twitter where Nebraska wasn't even a top 25 defense, but they had Colorado in there. And just, I don't know who's watching or looking at this, because statistically it's night and day. And then you watch them, it's like two different sports being played. So I don't know.
Were you surprised Tony White stayed at Nebraska?
Yeah, I was, because his alma mater opened up. Yeah,
I was gonna say part 2 is, when do you think he'll get a head coaching job?
Yeah, well, when UCLA opened up, it felt like a natural fit, especially coming off of the success that he pulled off in 2023 for Nebraska. I don't know the behind the scenes of that or get into that, but the fact that Nebraska and Rule were able to retain him, I think, says a lot about their motivation to contend for national titles and conference titles. They're still going to be able to outspend and position themselves well. So that was a big win for the defense, for the program, because I really thought that he could have gone there back to his alma mater and taken over. And your question about when will he leave? Coordinators are tough, man, because some of them really like the X's and O's of the game. You saw Chip Kelly make the move down from head coach to coordinator on his own accord because he wants to get back to X's and O's. So some guys don't have the desire to be a head coach nowadays with the fundraising, the booster stuff, and the NIL. So if you're, some guys have a true itch just for the coaching and the schemes of it. That's the coordinator role.
Yeah,
I would be shocked if he's back next year. I really would. I mean, the John Butler hire, I think, stands out to me as well. Just with, he wants to run a defense. He's pretty clear about that. Mm-hmm. And I just, the logical sequence to me is Evan Cooper sees. So Matt Rule, I'll back up for one sec. In Big Ten Media Days, he actually said that he approached John Butler over the winter. And so I kind of wonder if there's anything that kind of irked Evan Cooper there a little bit. But he approached him and he said, no, it's not the time. And then Evan Cooper ends up resigning, and then he goes back to him.
We still don't know. Do we know anything about Evan Cooper?
No, he's old news.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of just disappeared. And we're like, I guess he's just gone.
But so here's what was interesting was Rule said that he said this in one of his interviews. He said that Butler happened to be in the same beach town as him, like over this summer vacationing, and he was like, "Come over," and he talked to him, and he said, "All right, we're bringing you on as our guy." So he clearly knew that Cooper was leaving. Like, I don't think that's a shock to anybody because he was hired a day after it was announced that he was leaving.
Yeah, hours after.
But this had been kind of, I think, in the making. And then the fact that that Butler's kind of pretty clear, like, I want to run a defense. I would be willing to bet that a guy jumps from the NFL down to become a coordinator in the college ranks because there's a clear path. And to me, that's Tony White gives us one good, solid, excellent, hopefully year, and leaves the reins to him. What do you think about that?
I mean, that sounds good. I don't know the insider stuff as much with that, but that could signal that maybe one more year or something like that for Tony White. I'll tell you, if he stacks another top 10, top 15 defense, and especially if Nebraska climbs in the win column and gets back to bowl season, I could definitely see him on a lot of the short lists for the coaching carousel as a head coach. Now, does he want it? We don't, I'll never know the guy's personal ambitions, but schools will want him to take over. So it's a matter of time, like you said.
Do you have it handy? Who are the top coaches on the hot seat going into the year?
Yeah, well, it's not my opinion. It's actually a Vegas odds on this. I think the number one was Billy
Vegas
Napier
knows.
from Florida,
Yeah.
Dave Aranda from Baylor. It's funny, Ryan Day was like top 5, which is crazy to think.
Nuts.
But outside of the Ohio State bubble, yeah, it's crazy.
They are living on another planet.
Yeah, trying to think here, but I remember the two being Napier at Florida. They're already upset with him down there, and then Aranda, who he had the conference title a couple seasons ago and was an excellent defense, but they've really fallen off. So
he was who everybody wanted
run out of
here.
goodwill.
Yeah, he was pretty high on a lot of people's lists to come here, and yeah, I mean, I think Rule is a great hire for us and a much better
Dodged a
fit.
bullet.
But yeah, he's come down. Like Matt Campbell's come down quite a bit on that coaching carousel. Like a lot of those guys that were red hot. I don't know what the right answer is. I appreciate guys that have some loyalty, but I also am like, he missed, like Matt Campbell missed his spot, Aranda missed his spot. Like these guys they kind of missed like the opportunity to be like a top program. But
yeah, and
then you get fired. And that's thing.
Yeah. My last question for you, Brett, on defense. So last year, our biggest weakness ended up being our secondary and our pass defense. And it's not totally fleshed out in the numbers. I feel like just because we faced a lot of shit Big Ten competition and just horrible quarterbacks. But like Colorado, we had 8 sacks, but Shadur went 32 of 44 for 396. Michigan, just all kinds of bad things. I mean, just all of them. We had 0 sacks, and they went 16 of 23, just super efficient for 187 yards. And Maryland, Tagovailoa went 27 of 40 for 283. Those were the 3 best passing offenses that we played. And they kind of took it to us there. We've got USC, Ohio State, Colorado, and maybe even Wisconsin with Van Dyke coming in from Miami. Could all have some pretty decent pass offenses. Like, how do you feel like we stack up? Are we improved this year as a unit, or are we going to see a little bit more of the same where we stop the run, but they can pass on us?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it up because it's kind of a perfect representation of the stat boxes here on the screen. And for those not viewing, we have the raw stats on the top, and it shows a lot of green, which shows top 10, top 15 performance in pass defense. Yeah. And then at the very bottom in my opponent adjusted and per play metric, it shows that pass number drops to 27th out of 70. So a little bit more middle of the pack when you take into account you're playing some Big Ten West quarterbacks in a slower tempo. So yeah, that kind of proves it out. It was solid, but there was definitely more rushing defense success. I think it's good and bad for this year. I think you lose 2 starters with Brown and Newsome gone, so a little bit of a personnel shift. But I think you're due for a second-year coaching bonus, and you see this a lot with unique schemes or coordinator changes, where the first year there's some growing pains, the second year they really master the system, and I think that'll be reflected in the secondary. It's such a DB-centric defense, and I think you're going to see some gains just schematically.
Yeah, I think it just concerns me. I mean, the efficiency at which some of those teams had through the air. Unable to get off of the field, and you get down by 2 scores in an offense like that.
Yeah. You're going down a bad path here, Andrew. Let's get back on. All
right, let's get into our special teams. Let's get into our special teams, which was a vast improvement. that should be all greens, right? That should be all greens.
You're starting to do the death spiral of like what happens. What happens when everything falls apart?
All right, keep me above water. Let's get into special teams here. We've got 2 returners there. How do we see it playing out?
I think it'll improve just the year-over-year consistency of it. I mean, the kicking game was so bad for Nebraska the last handful of years. It was like it was cursed. Even last year, it might have felt better, but it was still a bottom 3 field goal kicking percentage. So, you're talking about these one-score losses all the time. It's, if you can just hit some field goals and convert better in the red zone. They were second worst in red zone touchdown conversion. And then if they were to kick it, they were third worst in field goal kicking. So, that's got to get better. I mean, and it has, because it was almost taken for granted for almost a decade when it was Alex Henry was the most accurate kicker ever. I forget, there was somebody, Brett Maher, I think was next. And he was sharp.
Chris Brown.
Yeah, the Browns. Yeah, the Browns for years. So that was something that was just such a given for Nebraska, and then to have it be nationally bad, it's gotta sting. So you fix the kicking game, that might flip a game or two itself, and I think it should improve with returners there.
Okay, we got to get to this. We got to get to the schedule because I need to get your perspective on it. Before we do, so we got a little over 1,100 folks on the line. We got Brett from Pick Six Previews. Go to pick6previews.com. You got to buy this magazine. It is absolutely outstanding. He's as you can clearly listen and see, he knows this stuff inside and out. Make sure you get that magazine and get some jerky while you're at it. Pipeline-jerky.com. But let's talk schedule. Let's talk Big Ten. Let's talk rankings. You've done unbelievable amount of research into the Big Ten. It's a brand new Big Ten. The media days are like completely throwing me off this week, where like it's messing me up. Dan Lanning is there. Like I think a lot about. So I guess I want to start at the top with you of like what you think about the Big Ten, like the new Big Ten. Like I was even thinking about how weird it is that like these guys probably had their media days out in like LA, and now you're asking like Lincoln Riley and Dan Lanning to come from Oregon to Indianapolis, and they're standing like arm in arm with Purdue, and how weird the new Big Ten is. But let's start at the top before we kind of dive into some of our schedule. What do you think of the new Big Ten? How do you think it's going to shake out?
Yeah, well, it's certainly the most change I've ever seen this offseason. And, as a historian of the game, I love the old history, the regionality, the in-state and the regional rivalries, the old conferences. So I'm definitely I was opposed to the conference realignment and the expansion. I wish the Pac-12 had survived. I'm one of those nuts that's up till 2 a.m. watching the Pac-12 finish up. And so to take away a big chunk of the regionality of the sport, I think is a shame. With that said, if you're heading towards a super conference era, the Big Ten did the best they possibly could. I mean, you bring in blue blood with USC, a new blood, or whatever you want to call Oregon, definitely a really high potential the next decade or two. And they've had recent success. UCLA is another LA power. And then Washington, fresh off a national title appearance. So if we have to do this whole conference realignment and super conference deal, the Big Ten did about as good as they could have. So, hats off to them. I will miss the Big Ten West. I like having divisions. I like the routine of playing a handful of certain teams every year. You start to build up rivalries naturally that way. And now these schedules are so scattered, it's ridiculous. I had to make a whole grid. It's this big grid on paper showing who plays who and who gets the schedule advantages, who draws a tough draw. So really made the job a lot harder. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. You're going to see a lot of new cool matchups, a lot of former Rose Bowl matchups with Ohio State, USC, Michigan, and Oregon, all those kind of teams. So they did well, given what they had to do.
They did well. I mean, everybody focuses on those, which will be incredibly fun. I do genuinely think those will be fun. But I'm more excited and intrigued to see like when USC has to go play Purdue in late November.
Yeah.
And it's like 4 degrees.
UCLA versus Rutgers.
Yeah, UCLA Rutgers in like October. It's like, oh, there's a lot of those.
On a Friday night.
Not as good as the Michigan USC type games.
Yeah, well, we'll be losing Pac-12 after dark, but in this weird bizarro offshoot, it'll be like Illinois, UCLA, and it'll probably be just as fun. It's just take some time to get used to. And
do you think? Go ahead.
No, it gives Nebraska fans and Big Ten fans some new locations to go visit. I mean, sure. I love getting across the country and seeing these campus towns, seeing the real college football Saturdays in person, and it gives you 4 new destinations. Now, I will say I've been to 3 of them. USC and UCLA, I did a Friday and a Saturday duo, and then I did Seattle, Washington. USC, UCLA, for Nebraska fans, you're not going to enjoy it. The stadium's half empty. There's no passion out there. You wouldn't even know there's a game happening walking around their campus. It was definitely a shock to me. Now, don't get me wrong. The actual stadiums are historic, the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum, but there was just no buzz around it. And then you go up to Seattle. It was nice and loud and it really scenic up there. So I recommend Seattle.
Yeah, interestingly, we've had home and aways against. I mean, the USC one we filled that whole place up with red. We got absolutely demolished.
Yeah,
but we traveled out there. But then some of my favorite games were the Washington games.
Yeah,
back in 2011 and 2012. That was like back when we had the absolutely unbelievably explosive offense. That was so fun. So we've been out there. We've seen it. It's been fun. I think they'll be interesting ones to have. But I was gonna say, so here's my hot take on the future of the conferences, and you tell me if I'm just dreaming. my hot take is like they'll continue to get bigger, and we'll have like either a giant super conference or 2 or 3 giant super conferences, and then those super conferences will have to divide up somehow, and they'll create like mini conferences, mini divisions. Like the Big Ten will be some super conference, and then one of the divisions of the Big Ten will just be like the old Big Eight.
Yeah. No, and then you'll have the Big Ten West Coast division, which will just be the Pac-8 and Pac-10. So
that would be
you're right. I like that. I'm going to cheer for that. Let's get these big enough that they have to subdivide into smaller conferences, and then we're back at square one. Let's do that.
They'll just be like, okay, it'll be like Nebraska. Your division is Kansas and Kansas State because you guys are right next to each other, and you'll also play Colorado. And then we'll have you play who's below. We'll give you Oklahoma. Like, oh, great. Right. So all of our rivals that we want to play. Fantastic.
The Big 8, Big 10.
Yeah, give me that. Yeah, I guess you could throw some Big 10 teams in there. But yeah, I just feel like in a future world, this thing's going to get so spread out that they need some kind of like I don't know. It'll eventually come back to what we always loved.
Hopefully, I want to get back to the tradition.
All right. Schedule-wise, here it is. Game by game. Nebraska versus UTEP.
Win.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Love that. Move on.
In Colorado, this will determine if you stay on this podcast or not. But
that's a win. That's a night game. You got them coming into Lincoln. That might be the first night game ever against Colorado, because didn't you historically play them in the noon game or 3:30 on Thanksgiving Friday?
Thanksgiving one, yeah.
That is going to be electric in there. And I have Nebraska rated ahead of Colorado. I have them 44th out of the 70 Power 5 teams, so I see a home win there.
Love it. Okay. 2-0, Northern Iowa.
Talking about.
No scare there. I think they go 3-0 there.
Oh my God,
right.
Brett, the Kool-Aid.
Just bought yourself another appearance.
Kool-Aid is rising. Illinois.
Win. I got Illinois 56th in Power 5, so Nebraska 23 spots ahead of them, and it's at home. I think it's another W. In fact, it's going to be a lot of W's until that bye week, guys.
Illinois spooks me a little bit because, like, we always flash forward, we look through this
because we had lost 3 in a row until last year.
We lose 3 in a row until last year, but we've lost like five times or something crazy. But Bielema battles. I guess. What do you think about him? You don't think he's like going to have a good team this year?
I think he's an excellent coach, an excellent program builder. Their recruiting profile just isn't there. And when you look at what made them great the last couple of years on defense, 2 years back, it was that great secondary. They were number one in pass defense. They sent 3 guys to the top 100 picks in the pros. Yeah. So they lost that last cycle. Then in 2023, they were strong in the trenches. They had an All-American there with Newton. Both those guys are gone. So the best parts of their team are gone. And I don't think that they've backfilled at the same pace as everybody else. So I have them 15th out of 18 in the conference.
Wow. Okay. All right. Purdue, a lot of people are pretty low on Purdue. What do you got there?
Yeah, I have Purdue tied in last place in the conference with Indiana. So that's 2 more future opponents coming up. You're playing set number 17 and number 18 in the 18-team Big Ten. So I see a W, and that gets you to 5-0. And now we're starting to talk about top 25. And the Kool-Aid will just be overflowing for you guys.
I'm going to be drunk. I'm going to be drunk on Kool-Aid.
If this place is 5-0 with Dylan Royal as the quarterback, like they'll build the statue in mid-October. Like he won't even make it for the Rutgers game. They'll be like, actually, Dylan, you can't play anymore.
Yeah, because be like, right, move that Devaney statue. We can make some room. I think out front we can move that one.
Rayola Field at Tom Osborne Stadium. All right, so we're 5-0 going into Rutgers. What do you think about Rutgers?
Well, this is going to be a tough physical game. This is not the Rutgers of 5 years ago. Greg Schiano has done it again. It's the second time back in New Jersey, and he's fixed it again. Quietly a really strong team, given within their context the last 5-10 years. Strong offensive line, strong run game with Kyle Monangai back. They have nothing at quarterback. That's their biggest issue. If they can get some competent play at quarterback, it'll be a more complete offense. Defense, very veteran and quietly pretty good. But, I'm not just doing this because I'm on the Husk Guys podcast, but I see a 6-0 and then a 7-0 start here. I think you're going to win this one and next week against Indiana.
Wow. Indiana, I thought, made a pretty good hire with Zanetti. Do you like him?
Good hire. He did a lot of great things all across the college football landscape, not just James Madison, but before that, I think it was the D2 level, even some junior college. He's had success everywhere. He calls it production over potential. And what that means is he's all about the transfer portal, bringing in proven guys that have proved it in college, valuing that more than just the high school recruiting rankings. And, he backed it up. He brought, I think, 15 James Madison players with him from last year's team. So the question is Sun Belt production the same as Big Ten production? I don't think it is. Good hire. I think it'll take a few years to get them rolling, though.
He had a line today at Big Ten Media Days that he was like, I've been picked last 2 or 3 times in my career, and I won the conference all 3 times. I mean, is that bravado, or do you think he actually thinks he can flip it that quickly?
I think he's got the right attitude. I mean, he's not going to go up there and say that they're going to go 3-9. I mean, it's okay to be confident. I think he will get the ship right at Indiana. They just have a lot of ceilings on their program. If you look at the long run of history, it's just not a football school. So they are shifting that, though. I mean, they signaled that with a huge buyout to fire Tom Allen. I think it was one of the highest buyouts ever in college football. So money is starting to flow to the football program there. And no, I like him. I think he's a great hire. And I think 2025 will be their climb up the ladder. It won't be this year.
God damn. All right. So 7. Ohio State. Talk to us about them.
Yeah, so I think with Nebraska, I think their schedule really sets up for a lot of wins in September and mid-October. Definitely 6-1, probably 7-0. That's what I would forecast. But then it gets really, really tough. Ohio State, I think the early line, Ohio State's favored by 24 points in Columbus. But who knows what'll shake out by the time that rolls around. I know on paper, though, this Ohio State team is one of the best in the country. They are top recruiters every year. And then this year, they really hammered home the transfer portal, bringing in 5 really high caliber players, all-American type guys. What else? They did a great job retaining their defensive players that could have gone pro. They're all back in Columbus. You dropped the dollar figure earlier, $20 million 1-year contract for this team. And I'll leave you with a couple of quotes. Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel, both on separate occasions, were just all over the amount of talent that's in that building. They said they'd never seen anything like it. It's the most talented Ohio State team they've ever seen. And, of course, they won national titles. So legitimate national title contender. I got to go Ohio State here.
I mean, if Ryan Day loses any games, then he probably is on the hot seat.
I think if they lose to Michigan, he will be fired. I mean, you can't go 0-4 over 4 years against Michigan, especially seeing them make it to the national title and win it. It's such a make or break game for him, but especially this year, they're really all the chips are in. They're title or bust this year.
They are title or bust. I was going to say they are stacked, and they're stacked on defense too. The Jim Knowles effect you wrote about in your book. I mean, gosh, he turned them around pretty quick because they were not this good on defense until last year, and then top 5 defense is pretty formidable with the offense that they've got rolling out there.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple Ryan Day teams were very offense heavy, very passing heavy, and didn't have the defense to show for it. But I mean, you could argue they were the number 1 defense in the country last year, definitely top 5. I mean, right there with Penn State, Iowa, Georgia. They were elite, and then they bring so much of it back.
Yeah,
I think it's multiple. I think it's 5 All-American caliber players I have in the book. Caleb Downs was an All-American as a freshman for Alabama. Right. They bring him in. So, yeah, it's a super team.
I mean, you mentioned Michigan. What do you think they're going to do this year?
I think Michigan takes a step back. I mean, I don't see a repeat national title run. In fact, I don't have them making the playoff in my playoff prediction.
They lost
too much change. Yeah, too much change. I think they lose something like 18 or 19 starters. Harbaugh's gone. And just that they hit the peak of the sport there with the title, and I think it's take a step back. It's natural. So I think they go something like 9-3 and finish 4th in the conference.
They lost 6 O-linemen to the NFL.
Yeah, and that's what really made them elite. It was the offensive line and their defense. And, all 6 offensive linemen gone. They do have some studs on defense still and a couple All-American guys, but it's just too much change. And in such a hyper-competitive conference, they'll take some losses.
All right, UCLA.
I have this chalked up as a W for Nebraska. UCLA going through a transition season there at head coach with Chip Kelly leaving. And they also took a lot of defenders with them to USC. Their coordinator, Danton Lynn, was hired by USC, brought, I think, 3 starters with him over across town to USC. So they have a lot of personnel hits. They lost their 5-star quarterback, Dante Moore, who transferred to Oregon. So I just don't see any real strengths on this team, and it's a transition team. So they check in at 48th out of 70 for me in Power 5, 12th in the conference. So Nebraska has, 15 spots advantage on them, and it's at home. So I'll go Nebraska.
Good
Brett,
Lord.
do you know? I want to make sure you understand what you're doing right now. You have us at 8-1.
8-1. I've got Kool-Aid flowing out of my ears.
Like, I hope you're like the most objective and accurate predictor of college football in the world. And you are saying that Nebraska, the team that has perpetually underperformed for the last 20 years, will be 8-1.
I think so. They're going to be favored in
God.
8 of those 9 games. I really think you'll see them favored in all 8 of those wins that I called for, but it gets a lot harder here in November, as we're about to see.
Oh, you know, we
you could probably cut it here. I mean, that'll probably be a good way. We'll just pause it there, and then that's it.
Go down. Are we about to go down a diabolical path? I feel much better. I actually thought coming in UCLA, I was nervous about them, and now the more I learn about them, I'm like, ooh, I think.
Did you see their coach's opening statement yesterday? I mean,
I felt bad for the poor
I felt
guy.
so bad for him, but God, if he's prepared like that for games, that's going to be a problem.
It's good for us. What? Yeah, USC. What do you got for them? That's a weird one for me because they're
I'm going to call for USC to win this one. I mean, Lincoln Riley, he always deals out top 10, top 15 offenses, and I know they lose Caleb Williams, but you just know they're going to have a solid offense. But I really am intrigued by their defensive hires. Finally got rid of Alex Grinch, who I think has held them back defensively, but brought in 3 guys with coordinator experience. I mentioned Danton Lynn coming over from UCLA. He led a top 20 defense over there last year. Brought in Matt Entz, the North Dakota State head coach to coach linebackers. So another set of eyes there. And the Houston coordinator. So I think a new sets of eyes on this team, on this defense will help them out because they recruit well. They pulled in a lot of transfers. And I think it's raw talent there. You just got to get a scheme that works. So I think they're going to make a big gain on defense and become a more balanced team. So I'll call for USC.
All right. I'm going to pause. So now we're at 8-2.
Still ranked at 8-2, probably.
Still ranked at 8-2. But even before we get to, I don't even know. I want to finish this, but because of a 12-team playoff, how many losses do you think you can have at this point in the season to realistically still kind of have a shot?
Well, it's a new era. We're all about to find out. I think everyone gets a mulligan. 11-1 will be in the playoff. 2 is questionable. I think it's going to be on conference strength. So a 2-loss ACC might have a harder time than a 2-loss SEC. I think in general, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get more bids than the ACC and Big 12. I think that's natural to think that way. The committee has shown that over the years, and both leagues got stronger. So it's a matter of how many Big Ten teams make it. And if it's 3 or 4, then you're sitting there 10-2, could probably make a playoff bid or be in the discussion. I think 9-3, 3 losses is probably a knockout. So that's definitely the divider line. 3 you're out, 2 you're in the discussion, 1 you're in.
Because I'm looking at the records of the top 15 teams last year. And besides, Michigan went undefeated, but then, I guess Washington is undefeated too. But Texas had the loss, Georgia had the loss, Alabama. But even as you get down to 12, LSU finished 10-3, Penn State was 10-3, Notre Dame was 10-3, Oklahoma was 10-3. So I'm realizing that that's also including their bowl games. But you're in the discussion at 10-2, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10-2 from the Big Ten is definitely discussion, and then it'll get into some of the debate points about strength of schedule, ranked wins, whatever jargon the committee says. But if you go 11-1, I think you're pretty much in a lock. 10-2 is debatable, and then 9-3 would be you're out. So,
but I guess what I'm getting at is we're playing meaningful football, which we have not. We have lost our opening game throughout the last 7 seasons. So basically our season ended in September, sometimes before September. And we're talking about meaningful, very meaningful football late into November. In November, which is unheard of here. Not only meaningful, bowl meaningful, but potentially playoff level meaningful if this plays out the way the most accurate predictor.
But another thing that's not being talked about enough in this new conference era is all these crazy tiebreakers that are going to unfold because the conferences are too big now where you have 18 teams in the league. But only, and there's no divisions. So you have just a jumble of teams that are all going to finish, 7-2 or 6-3 in a conference. And then a lot of them won't have played each other. So it's going to be really messy. And you saw a little bit of that with the Big 12 last year, if you recall. It was all these scenarios. The commissioner had to put out a big statement about the 1,000 different scenarios. It's going to be a mess. So we'll see what happens here. Head-to-head will not even come into effect a lot of times because you won't have played each other.
That's crazy. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that, how you'll have probably like one Ohio State at the top, and then everybody else is going to have 1, 2, or 3 losses. That'll be crazy.
Yeah.
What? All right, Wisconsin. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin gets this one. So,
for the love of God.
Yeah, they're about evenly ranked. If you read the book, I have them both in that 30s range. I do think Wisconsin's going to make some great improvements this year. Their second year with Coach Longo, their coordinator, a guy I've got to talk to every preseason the last 5 years, and I believe in his system. He's going to get his yardage, he's going to get his points, and I think Wisconsin's defense takes a step forward too. They've been uncharacteristically down the last couple of years, so just a solid program. Their experience there in late November. I know it's in Lincoln, but it's I'm going to go with Wisconsin in a coin flip.
That would be 10 in a row to Wisconsin.
Oh.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. And looking back on those, a lot of them were very winnable. I mean, what was the one with the fullback? The fullback ran up the middle of the field, 50 yards. I thought that was a win.
It's lost in the last.
All right. So Iowa.
You don't have to do that again.
rip the Band-Aid off on Iowa.
Yeah, I've got Iowa here.
Okay.
I think it's an elite defense again, and I'm sure that Nebraska fans are sick of hearing it, but this time around they really retained their top talent. I think that their NIL and their player personnel did a great job because a lot of these guys could have gone pro or maybe taken more lucrative deals across the country because they're all American caliber at every position group. So Phil Parker, one of the best coordinators in the game, finally was recognized. I can't believe it took this long for him to win the coordinator awards last year, but he's one of the best in the game. And, the offense can't get worse. It just literally cannot get worse. Tim Lester coming in, he'll shift things around. They have Power 5 quarterbacks now under center. So I think it's a very solid team. I have them 20th nationally, 5th in the Big Ten. They got a really good schedule boost this year too. We talked about the schedule imbalance. They only play one of the top 6 in the conference. So
their schedule is a joke. It's crazy.
Actually one of my best bets for win totals is the over 7.5 wins for Iowa. So but anyway, long story short, I think Iowa gets this one, and that would put Nebraska 8-4 overall, which would be their best since Riley's 16 team, I guess.
Yeah.
5-4 in the conference, middle of the pack, 7th in the Big Ten.
Well, so and I'm going to forget, Andrew, which one of the podcasts we did where somebody asked, what do you think is quote unquote back? But this basically gets us back to like the Bo Pelini era of like Bo beat everybody who's supposed to beat all the time, right? He was like, like clockwork. You could walk in, you're like, he's definitely going to beat. He's definitely beating Rutgers. He's definitely beating Maryland. He's definitely beating Purdue.
There would be one slip up a year, but 9-3 was reliable.
Yeah, 9-3 was reliable, and then you're playing, and then you get boat raced by Ohio State, Wisconsin. But like to me, I'm like, I totally get it. Objectively coming at it, I would say those last 3 games are going to be really, really tough. I think everybody's not shying that, and there's no reason for anyone to believe we can ever beat Wisconsin because they beat us 10 straight years. But on those coin flip, like 1-score losses, like, do we finally win one freaking big game? And if you win one of those 3 and you're knocking on the door of like having a pretty darn good season, you finish 9-3. I mean, 8-4 will definitely take, but it would be 8-4 is kind of depressing after 8-1. But it is, I mean, I will take that just from a purely like, we just haven't routinely beat Illinois. We haven't routinely beat Purdue. We haven't routinely beat Rutgers. And like, if you can even do that, to then have, Royola coming back for a year or 2 next year, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the schedule really sets up well. It's probably the most unbalanced of beginning and ending of schedules. I mean, the first 7 games, when you're looking at it here on the screen, they're going to be favored in all 5 of those home games. With Colorado and Rutgers being tighter lines, but you're at home, and I think they'll be favored in both. And the 2 road games are against the 2 teams I projected the bottom of the league. So even on the road at Purdue and at Indiana, I think Nebraska will still be favored. So, on paper right now here in late July, I would favor them in the first 7 games, a matter of if they go and take it. And that, like you just hinted at, that hasn't been the case. I mean, they've been favored a lot of times over the years against some of these Big Ten West teams and found ways to come up short. But I think with a new quarterback and the second-year bonus by the staff, I think you're due to win some of these games. You should win, and even some of the coin flips. So 7-0 start. It hurts being on the road against USC and Iowa. I do like the UCLA game, like I said, with the coach transition, and then Wisconsin's just that toss up where I think it goes against them.
Yeah.
Flipped one of those games for 9-3, though. I mean,
and that's the thing is like, and Rule's going to know this. It's similar to like the Michigan Ohio State thing. Like you can't keep losing to Wisconsin, Iowa. It's not his fault. He's just new here, but those are turning into games that are close to like you got to win one of those just to like make sure keep the fan base close. God, I cannot believe we haven't beat them in 10 years. It's so freaking bad.
Yeah, Wisconsin's 9 in a row, and Iowa's 8 out of 9.
So bad. All right, back to good stuff. That's good. I appreciate that, Brett. Who? I think it's in your book. Who do you have winning the Big Ten?
I got Ohio State over Oregon. And Oregon, I think, is a legit national title contender themselves. It's just that they're stuck in the same league as Ohio State. So
they're both playoff teams, though. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely both playoff caliber. And then I do have a third team making the 12-team bracket with Penn State. I think that they're going to go finish with 2 losses, and they're going to make it in there finally into the playoffs. So I have 3 playoff teams: Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State.
Love that.
Penn State. That's an interesting one. I was going to say, who's your third? Like, do you think the loser of the Big Ten will still be able to make the loser of the Big Ten championship will still make the playoff or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And this is also a new variable that we're not sure what the committee will do here. We know it goes to the winner. Obviously, you get the automatic bid and you get the first round bye. We don't know how they're going to treat a conference title loser. Now, back in the day when you had unbalanced divisions like the ACC Coastal or some years the Big Ten West, they were kind of on a different plane than their conference title opponents. So not all the conference title losers were created equal, if you will. But nowadays, with it being super conferences, to finish second in the Big Ten will be an honor itself. So I still think losing in a conference title game, they'll be considered over the runners up. So like the third or fourth place teams. So I think that all 3 of them will make the bracket.
Right.
Love it. Andrew, is there last couple of things you want to cover? I want to make sure we're Brett.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the last few things, I mean, this has been awesome, and thank you very much for your time, Brett. But the last few things we had mentioned kind of before the show that we were just talking about is that you dove into a couple of other things, and this to me is a little bit more indicative of like the future of Nebraska and like how are we gonna, are we keeping up first of all, and how are we gonna be cool with these young kiddos these days? Like what are we gonna do? What do we got to do to be the cool guy on the block? And so Nebraska sits at number 21 in your brand rankings according to recruits. Like, tell us about that study and why this is important for Nebraska fans to say, hey, this is actually kind of an important revelation here.
Yeah, sure. So, we have thousands of followers there on Twitter, and a lot of them are high school recruits, current high schoolers. And what we did back in, I think it was 2021, we pulled, I think it was 500 or so actual recruits. Now, they weren't all blue chippers, but they were in the high school recruiting process. And basically the premise was, if you were the number 1 overall player in the country, if you were a true 5-star and you had your pick of everything, like how would you evaluate these programs? And like, how it's hard to explain, but how do you view their brand and how do you view their program? All those different categories you think of: fan support, championship legacy, all of that, the exposure, the pro potential, the pro pipeline. And as you see on the screen here, Clemson and Ohio State were 1, 2, and Penn State 3. Nebraska's still there at 21. And point this out because this was really some of the worst Husker football in generations. I mean, right. when this was conducted, this was right between the Mike Riley and the Scott Frost eras. And so it's notable that to high school recruits, they can recognize still the potential that Nebraska has had or can have. So to check in there at number 21 nationally during their worst football ever, I think speaks testaments. And somewhat related to this, I think part of it too is you look at spring games, and this is argued all across the country whether spring games matter. I think at certain schools it really, really matters, Nebraska being one of them, because just given the geography, it's hard to get recruits out to Lincoln. But if you do get them there, Nebraska shows so well. I mean, it just exudes college football history and college football passion. I've been out there. I was out there last year or 2 years ago for the Oklahoma game. Awful timing because they just had fired Frost, and there was the whole Mickey Joseph interim game. But yeah, even on one of their worst Husker teams in a long time, you could still sense that this is serious blue blood football, culture, passion. Another sellout, a record sellout. And I loved it. And, I can imagine the recruits that go see a game on campus would feel the same. So to the average high schooler, they still are viewing Nebraska as a top 20 program despite the win-loss records.
So I want to jump in on this because it's actually happening right now. That's why all these comments are coming in to show you the maniacal fanhood of this fan base. I don't know if you're following this on Twitter right now, Andrew, but so David Sanders, one of the 5-star, I think he's number one lineman in the country.
Retweeted that. Yeah.
He's coming in, and Dylan Raiola, our quarterback, said, let's welcome David Sanders home to Lincoln. Meet us outside the new Tom Osborne complex at 5:15 tomorrow. Calling all Husker fans, go Big Red. I'll be picking him up at the airport at 1:30. Let's show him some love.
Absolutely.
It's got 500,000 views to it, and the people, including a lot of the comments coming on here, we're showing at the facility tomorrow. Let's all show out at the facility tomorrow. That's what these are coming in for.
Yes.
The
affirmative.
Just maniacal.
This isn't a question. This is a command from your general. This is your leader that has basically said, "This is what's happening," and Husker fans take that to heart. This is a challenge.
Well, you see this also with the spring game debates where I like to put out rankings of who had the most fans on campus. And I know it's just a spring game and all that, but like I said, it matters a lot at certain places. My take on this, you see some fans that say, there's nothing better to do in Lincoln or nothing better to do in Columbus. And my alternative to that is if you're a high school football player and a college football player, wouldn't you want to surround yourself with people that love college football and love what you're doing and are interested? Because like I said, I went to UCLA for a game. You wouldn't have even known there was a game happening. So do you really want to go play? I know it's in Southern California and all, but do you really want to do your craft, your college football in front of an empty stadium and your classmates don't care and the alumni doesn't care? So it's the old debate in spring season, but I think it speaks volumes to Nebraska that, hey, they do love college football. If you love college football, go play there because you'll be respected, you'll be appreciated, and that's my little rant there. It comes up every offseason with spring games, and I find myself defending programs like Nebraska, like Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, look at these brand rankings. Like you look at the towns that all of these schools are in. It matters, but how much? Got Baton Rouge in there.
Andrew always has a good comeback to that too, bro. I think it's a good rant of because we get hammered of there's nothing to do. That's why you guys sell out. And Andrew always comes back with we play 7 home games a year.
Yeah.
And it's, and you're the most beloved team that you're a diehard fan of. And it's 7 Saturdays a year. You can go to the games. And for the fans who are we go to the beach.
What would you rather be doing?
You can't.
Where would you be?
I find that with the LA crowd, the USC, UCLA people, it's you get 6 home games. You really have to go to the beach for the 50th time. I mean, there's a concert. Go to a different concert. I don't get it.
My God.
I'll say this: when I was out there in Nebraska, it really stuck out just how uniform everybody was. I mean, everyone was talking about the game, all ages. There was no other no other fan bases involved because on the East Coast, it's all these pro sports and. You're an Eagles family, but then there's Cowboys fans, there's Giants fans, or even some fans only like hockey or baseball. Out there, what I noticed, it was just solely Husker football and high school football, and that was just, hey, if you love football, why wouldn't you love that and respect that? So that's my kind of fan base, and a lot of respect to you guys. I mean, I know because they'll have me on the radio in the middle of the off season in Nebraska, and we'll talk great college football with Gary Shark, Damon Benning, the whole crew, and
all the time.
A lot of respect to the fans, the media complex out there. It's impressive.
Yeah, it's 9:40 at night on a Thursday night in July 25th, and we got 1,600 people here that are live with us. So it's a maniacal fan base. It's very different.
We love you all.
But it's the best. It's the best. It's absolutely outstanding. Yeah. Brett, we really appreciate everybody who is still listening. Pick6previews.com. Make sure you check out his magazine. You guys got to check it out. It's very, very good stuff. We've shown you some teasers of it. We'll also show you this. I guess we probably should have done a full disclosure of it. Where that? Oh, I have to refresh. Hang on. See if I can do this in real time. It's a little technical.
Official.
Look at this. Look at that. There we are, baby. There we are, baby. The Husk Guys store. Go to the huskguysstore.com. Straight in the Pick 6 Previews magazine. That's where you get all the cool merch, 10% discount straight from the Pick Six previews. Brett, it's awesome to have you on. Andrew, do you have any more final thoughts here?
I guess, yeah, the final one would just be, just give me the overall purview for like just Nebraska football, the 10,000 foot view. We've got new hires this year. We've got Rule at the helm. I'm feeling good about it. I think the fans should be feeling good about it. We've got a maniacal fan base. We've got a great financial support that needs to be getting better. Are the wins coming? And if so, when are we competing for a conference title? When are we competing for national titles again?
Yeah, well, I think two answers. One specifically for 2024. I think you're going to see improvement in the win-loss column. You get a schedule boost, a second-year bonus from the new staff, and Tony White being retained was huge. Upgrade at quarterback, which was by far the worst position group. It's a veteran offensive line. The receiver stable is dynamic. Fedoni is all-conference caliber at tight end. So it's all looking up in 2024. I think 8-9 wins are possible with the bowl game. So that's the specific view there. The 10,000 foot view for the future, I think Nebraska is positioned well. I say that because the game is kind of shifting even more towards the more passionate fan bases, the big NIL deals, the boosters. Like it or not, that's just how it's trending. It's always been important, but now that it's out in the open and it's legalized and endorsed, it's just becoming more and more important. So from what I saw from the fans out there and from what you see on Twitter and online and just their sellout streak and the passion, they're never going to let Nebraska die. They're never going to let Nebraska football die. And when there's even more impact on their on-field success, via donations and boosters and all that, I think Nebraska's poised really well compared to some of their peers.
That's what I like to hear, baby.
Brett, you just delivered some of the most delicious Kool-Aid we've drank in a long time.
Genuinely
appreciate having you on, man. It's great to get to chat for an hour and a half. What an opportunity for us to, we've been reading you guys for years. It's great stuff. Everybody's listening, pick6previews.com. Make sure you guys check it out. It's great stuff. Brett, thanks for having us on, or thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. And go Big Red.
GBR.
Yeah, thank you guys.